Today, we're going to take a look at the ServiceGuru Triggers add-on in ServiceM8. A trigger is something conducted by the system in response to certain criteria or a trigger rule being met. This can be a trigger based on a change within a job card, for example, a change of job status, or it can be based on a job event or action being completed, for example, when a new job is created or a quote is sent. In this tutorial, we're first going to have a look at how we can configure the add-on and set it up, after which we'll see how this works in practice. So let's go ahead and head to the add-ons tab of our account. Here we're going to access ServiceGuru Triggers. Let's have a look at setting up a new trigger. So let's press on the blue New Trigger button. The Triggers add-on can be used to automate a large variety of tasks depending on what is relevant to you. Whether this is to send a welcome letter to new customers whenever creating a new client, or to send an SMS to your admin team to remind them to complete a certain action when a job is moved to a certain queue, or to turn on badges when a job card is of a certain status. You can really set your trigger to suit you. For this tutorial, we're going to create a trigger that will complete certain actions when a job is scheduled. So let's insert a name for this. Scheduled service. After this, we get to choose a status. Now, trigger status by default is live, which means that the trigger will run whenever it meets its trigger rules or criteria. Should you wish to stop a trigger from running, you can simply click it to be paused. For now, we're going to leave this as live. Next, we're going to enter our rules section here. And this is where we define our trigger criteria rules. There's a number of different options, which we can find when selecting this tab. Here, we can set our trigger rules to go based on a job action, a client action, or a custom field, which we'll look at setting up in a moment. Let's go ahead and look at what kind of options we have for the job. So here we can see that we have options of when a job is created, a job is in a certain status, a job is of a certain category, a job is scheduled, a job is added to queue, a job quote is sent, a job invoice is sent, a job invoice is approved, or a job payment is made. Now, should we select job is of status or a category? When clicking this, we can see that then we are given a selection of different options to choose from. For example, quote, work order, completed, or unsuccessful. Before we fully set this up, let's just check what options we have for client. For client, we have options of when a client is created or when a client has a job created. For this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and select when a job is scheduled. You can set up multiple rules for your triggers simply by clicking the plus button. And to remove it, you can simply click the minus button. Should you have multiple rules, you can select for the system to trigger when either any of the following rules are met or when all of the following rules are met. For now, we just want to set the one rule. Next, we can select our timing. By default, this add-on suggests to trigger immediately, but you can select for a trigger to occur after a certain time period. For example, a certain number of days or months. For now, we're going to trigger immediately. Next, we have our actions, and this is where we define what action the trigger will complete upon meeting a rule or criteria. Here we have numerous options. For example, sending an email, sending an attachment, sending an SMS, changing the job status, adding a note to the job, adding or updating the job description, adding or updating the work done description, adding the job to a queue, adding a badge to the job, removing a badge from the job, add a job material or service, or create a new job. For this tutorial, we would like to add a note to the job. Here we can write our note. Please make note of the emergency arrangements when arriving to the site. We want to perform another action. So let's go ahead and click this plus button. Now we would also like to add a badge for the job, which will provide us with a list of badges that we have available. In this instance, we would like our staff member to fill in the pre-works report. So we're going to go ahead and click our pre-badge. We would also like for the customer to be reminded of their appointment. So we're going to turn on another badge, which is the booking reminder. Now that we're happy with our actions, let's move on to the next section. You are then provided an option to either repeat the actions or don't repeat these actions. Should you select to repeat these actions, you can now choose the time point when to start and stop the repeat of the action. Now this can be after 12 days or months. And then you can decide to stop or repeat again, and you can continue this pattern as much as it suits you. This may be useful, for example, to chase up on a quote, for feedback requests, or for yearly reminders of a service. You can finally select when to cancel any repeating action, which you can choose never, if a job is created, or if a client has a job scheduled. For this example, we're going to choose not to repeat. Finally, you have our extra settings section. Here, we can choose whether we should allow to trigger multiple times on the same job, or to trigger only once per client. Should we wish to enable one of these, we can simply tick these. For now, we're going to leave these empty. Two things to note is that care must be taken when creating your trigger repeat rules. The reason this warning is here is because you can run into an endless cycle of repeats and triggers being sparked. Within our settings, we do have the option of adding a limit to the number of times a trigger can run on the same job. We'll look at this shortly. For now, we're going to go ahead and save our trigger. As we can see, this has now been added. Before we move on, let's just have a look at the email settings available should you wish your trigger to send an email. Here we have a pre-made trigger called Welcome New Client. Let's go ahead and look at how this has been set up. So for this trigger, one of the actions has been to send an email to the billing contact. Should you wish to send an email or an SMS, you do get given a choice of sending to the billing contact, sending to the job contact, sending to a site contact, or setting up an email address or phone number for this to be sent to manually. For now, we're going to choose the billing contact. Here we can see that we have an email formatting tool in which we can apply our text, for which we can use merge fields from the right-hand side. To use one, you would simply copy and paste it into this field. Here, you do have numerous tools to change text color or background color, make text bold or in italics, and other tools that you would need to make an email. For now, we're going to leave this as is. So we're just going to go ahead and click save. Before we see how this trigger runs in practice, let's have a look at some extra settings we have available to us. First, we have our custom fields. For this add-on, we can set trigger-specific custom fields, should these be relevant. Please note that these are different from custom fields you may have available in a job card. Here, we can go ahead and click New Custom Field. Custom fields are a great way to expand rules or criteria available to you in a job card in order to spark a trigger. This can be anything that's relevant to you. For example, a lead source, or a discount type, or a service plan. Should you wish to set up a custom field, you can simply insert it here. So for example, service plan, after which you get to select the type. The types of custom fields we have available are text, number, drop-down, date, or checkbox. Let's have a look at inserting a drop-down. First, you get to select whether this field is mandatory or not, in which case we're gonna leave that open for now. And as our service plan, we have options, for example, silver and gold. We're gonna go ahead and click save. Now that we have our custom field applied, we can either edit this by pressing the edit button, or we can remove this by pressing the X. Finally, let's have a look at our settings. Within settings, we can set the number of times a trigger can run in a single job to prevent repeat rules from repeating endlessly. By default, this is listed as 10, but you can make this whatever is suitable to you, for example 1, and click save. We're going to head to the dispatch board, and we're going to open job ABC2. When we set up our trigger, we set this up to trigger from when a job is scheduled. So let's go ahead and schedule this job. We're going to select our staff member, and we're going to save. For the trigger to appear, we're going to close this job card, and please note that this may take a moment for the trigger to apply. Let's go ahead and reopen this. And as we can see, Triggers has now applied our note and has turned on the 2 badges that we wanted. Now let's go ahead and have a look at how we can utilize our custom field here. Within the add-on tab, we go to Trigger Custom Fields and Settings. This will display any custom fields that we have available. In order for these to apply for a job, should you have one of your trigger criteria listed based on a custom field, you can simply go ahead and select your option or fill in your answer depending on what kind of custom field you had listed. We can simply click save here. One thing to note within the custom fields is that we have a settings tab here. Let's go ahead and click that. Here we can see that we have an email opt-out or SMS opt-out. There may be instances where a customer will specifically ask to opt out from emails or SMSs that a trigger may provide them, in which case we can just go ahead and tick the relevant option. By default, these are left empty, and we're going to leave these empty for now. Finally, let's just go ahead back to the add-on within the add-on tab. And let's have a look at our log for the schedule service that just triggered. As we can see, we can view any triggers that have been completed for this particular trigger. And that's it for the Triggers add-on. This is an extremely versatile tool to automate your ServiceM8 actions and day-to-day management, and we hope that you'll enjoy this add-on as much as we do.